Yeah, myself, this is Mahesh Kumar, Assistant Professor of Chemistry. Uh, Today's topic in the environmental sustainability is environmental legislation. In that, we have different Forest Act, Air Act, Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Today, we are going to deal with this Wildlife Protection Act 1972. What are the recommendation given by the state government and the central government for this Wildlife Protection Act 1972? 1972. Now, topics today we are going to cover under this is Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Is what actually how to prevention and control of Prevention and Protection of Wildlife Act 1972. It comes under the environmental legislations. It is also one of the part of environmental legislation. Okay, what actually these environmental legislations are? Environmental laws are the laws that protect the environment. Okay, these there are certain laws given by the government which will protect the environment. Is nothing but the environmental laws that protect the environment. Laws is nothing but the collection of here environmental law is a collection of laws, collection of laws and regulations, regulations and agreements and the common law that govern how women interact with the environment. How women interact with the environment. Okay, it is nothing but the collection of laws, regulations, agreements, and the law that govern how women interact with the environment is nothing but environmental law. Okay, this includes the environmental regulations. It includes the environmental regulations, laws governing the management of natural resources such as forest, minerals, fisheries, and the related topics such as environmental impact assessment, that is called as EIA. EIA. Okay, it includes regulations. It includes what? Regulations, laws governing the management, laws governing the management, and such as forest, minerals, or the fisheries, and the related topics such as EIA, Environmental Impact Assessment. Environmental Impact Assessment. All these are comes under the environmental regulations, laws governing the environment and the forest, minerals, fisheries, and the related topics that comes under the environmental impact assessment. Environmental impact assessment. Okay, regulations, laws governing the management such as natural resources, forest, minerals, fisheries, and related topics such as environmental impact assessments comes under the environmental legislations. Okay, environmental law is seen as a body of laws. Okay, it is seen as one of the body of laws concerned with the protection of living things. Concerned with the protection of living things. Human beings inclusive from the harm. Human beings inclusive from the harm and from the harm that human activity may immediately or eventually cause to them or the species either directly or media to the habitats on which they depend. Okay, they are again like biotic and biotic component and abiotic component. They are like a biotic component and abiotic component. What is biotic component? Biotic component is nothing but living component of the ecosystem is nothing but the biotic component. Living component of the ecosystem is a biotic component and non-living component. Non-living component of the living component of the ecosystem is called abiotic component. They are like a biotic component and abiotic component. Biotic component is a living component of the ecosystem. Abiotic component is a non-living component of the ecosystem. comes under the environmental legislations. It is one of the body of laws concerned with the protection of living things. Protection of living things from the harm that human activity may immediately or eventually cause to them or their species, either directly or media and the habits on which they depend. Now coming to the Act, Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Wildlife Protection Act 1972. What actually this is? Okay, what are the objectives of this act? Wildlife Protection Act 1972 is an act of Parliament of India. Okay, it is one of the act from the Parliament of India enacted for the protection of plants and animal species. Okay, here the main aim of this wildlife is protection of protection of plant and animal species. Plants and protection of plants and animal species are comes under the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, enacted for the protection of plants and animal species. Before 1972, only in India only had designated national parks. There was no Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Before this, there are only national parks will be are available. National parks are available, but after the came of this Wildlife Protection Act 1972, the many acts has came to out. The main objectives of this act are prohibition on hunting of specified wild animals, birds, and plants. Okay, first objective of this Wildlife Protection Act 1970 is we have to hunt. We have to prohibit. Okay, we cannot do hunting of specified wild animals like lion, tiger, okay, and birds, ostrich type, plants, neem plant like that. We do not do any without any proper reason. Okay, prohibition of hunting of specified wild animals, birds, and plants is one of the main objective of Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Setting up and management of national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. Okay, we need to set up and we need to manage the uh, national parks and wildlife sanctuaries. Control of trade and commerce in wildlife products. Control of trade and commerce in wildlife acts. Okay, these are the objectives of Wildlife Protection Act 1972. One is the prohibition on hunting of specified wild animals, birds, and plants, and setting up and management of national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, and control of trade and commerce in the wildlife products. Okay, what are the products that are getting from these wild animals? We need to control it in the trade and commerce for the future generation. Now, what are the authorities to be appointed or constituted under this act? Okay, what are the authorities should be appointed under this act? Is one is appointment of director and other officers. Okay, one is appointment of director. One is appointment of director and other officers. Appointment of directors and other officers, and appointment of chief wildlife warden, chief wildlife warden, and other officers, and the next one is power of delegates. Power of delegates also one of the authority should be there in the Wildlife Protection Act 1972, and Constitution of Wildlife Advisory Board. Constitution of the Wildlife Advisory Board, procedure to be followed by the board. Okay, these are the authorities to be appointed or constituted under the Act, Wildlife Protection Act 1972. One is appointment of director and other officers, appointment of chief wildlife warden and other officers, power of delegates, Constitution of Wildlife Advisory Board, procedures to be followed by the board. These are the some of the appointments, authorities to be appointed or constituted under the Act. What are the duties of Wildlife Advisory Board? What are the duties that comes under the Wildlife Advisory Board? The duties of Wildlife Advisory Board advises the state government about. Okay, it advises to the state government. Okay, there should be central government board, advisory board, and the state government advisory board, what are the duties that uh, should be given by the advisory board to the state government is to the selection of areas. One is selection of areas to be declared as a sanctuaries, and one is selection of areas declared as a sanctuaries, declared as a sanctuaries. Next one is national parks, sanctuaries, national parks, are and closed areas. Closed areas. These are the some of the uh, duties that given by the advisory board to the state government. Selection of areas to be declared as a sanctuaries, national parks, closed areas, and formulation of policy for protection and conservation of wildlife specified plants. Formulation of policy for protection, policy for uh, policy for protection and conservation, protection and conservation of wildlife. Protection and conservation of wildlife should be given by the state government about the wildlife advisory board. Okay, it is one, the selection of areas to be declared as sanctuaries, national parks, and closed areas, and formulation of policy for protection and conservation of wildlife and specified plants. Wildlife and protection and policy for protection and conservation of wildlife and specified plants. Okay, these are the some of the duties of wildlife advisory board given to the state government. Okay, sanctuaries, national parks, and closed areas. We have to select it, and we need to formulate the policy for protection and conservation. One is we need to for protection and conservation of wildlife and specified plants. Wildlife and specified plants also given for this Wildlife Protection Act 1972. Now, the measures to be taken by the harmonizing the needs, the tribal and other dwellers of the forest with protection and conservation of wildlife. What are the measures? Okay, measures to be taken for harmonizing the needs, the tribals and other dwellers of the forest with protection and conservation of wildlife. Okay, what are the measures to be taken by the tribal people for the forest protection and also for the conservation of wildlife? Okay, any matter referred to it is by state government. Okay, any matter will be there that should be they have to answer to the state government. Okay, there are some sections given by the state government. Section 9 is nothing but the prohibition of hunting. Okay, section 9 is prohibition of hunting. In that it comes under capturing, killing, poisoning, trapping any wild animal in the prohibition. Section 10 is the maintenance of records of wild animals killed or captured. Section 11 is hunting of wild animals to be permitted in contains cases. Section 10 is the maintenance of records of wild animals killed or captured. Section 11 is hunting of wild animals to be permitted in contained cases. Contains cases. There are some sections given by the state government. Is Section 9, Section 10, Section 11. Section 9 is a prohibition of hunting. Section 10 is a maintenance of records of wild animals killed or captured. And 11 is a hunting of wild animals to be permitted in contained cases. Contained cases. There are cases 1 and cases 2. Case 1 is if the chief wildlife warden is satisfied, then the any animal has to become dangerous to human life, such as animal to be hunted. Okay, what is that case 1 gives means if the chief warden of the particular wild is satisfied that the animal is dangerous, then he should be given the particular person to be hunt that wildlife. Okay, the case 2 is a killing or wounding a good faith of any wildlife in self-defense shall not be an offense. Okay, killing of the wildlife is a good faith. Okay, it says that good faith of any wild animal in self-defense shall not be an offense. Okay, these are the two cases given by the state government. One is the chief wildlife warden is satisfied that any wild animal has to become dangerous. Okay, the human life should be human life. If any wild animal has to become dangerous to the human life, then such animal should be hunted, and the killing or owning in a good faith of any wild animal is a self-defense shall not be an offense. Okay, it should be killed and it should not be protected. Now, what are the sections given? Section 12 grant of permit to special purpose. Okay, it gives a grant of permission for the special purpose. Section 13 is suspension or cancellation of license. Section 13 is suspension of cancellation of license, and section 14 is appeals, and section 15 is hunting of young and female wildlife. Section 15 is hunting of young and female wildlife. Section 17 is the restriction of hunting, and section 40 and 42 regarding the ownership issues and trade licenses, and section 51 is penalties are prescribed in section 51. Enforcement can be performed by agencies such as Forest Department, Police, Customs, and CBA, Central Bureau of India. Okay, these are some of the sections given by the section 12, section 13, section 14, section 15, section 17, section 14, 42, and section 51. Like the previous sections, whatever we have, section 9 is prohibition and of hunting. Section 10 is maintenance of records of wild animals killed or captured, and section 11 is hunting of wild animals to be permitted in contained cases. Contained cases, and this there are also section 12 that grant the permits to spouse special purpose, and grant of permit of for the special purpose. Suspension or cancellation of license is a section 13, and some appeals are given by the section 14 and section 15. The hunting of young and female of wild animals and restriction of hunting is section 17. Section 40, 42 regarding the ownership issues and the trade licenses. 51 penalties are prescribed in the 51. Enforcement can be performed by the agencies such as Forest Department, Police Department, Custom, and CBA. Custom and CBA. These are some of the sections given by the government in order to protect from the wildlife, in order to protect measures to be taken for harmonizing the needs the tribal people and other dwellers of the forest with the protection and conservation of wildlife. Okay, here it is totally based on the state government. Section 19 is a prohibition of hunting. Section 10 is maintenance of records of wild animals are killed or captured. Section level is the hunting of wild animals to be permitted in some special cases, and the section 12 grant for the permit for the special purpose, and the suspension or cancellation of license is a section 13. Section 14 is appeals given for the so and so purpose, and the hunting of young and female of wild animals. Section 17 is a restriction of hunting. Section 40 and 42 regarding the ownership issues and the trade licenses. Section 51 penalties are prescribed in section 51. Enforcement can be performed by the agencies such as Forest Department, Police Department, Custom, and the CBI comes under the environmental legislations. Okay, the cases given by the state government is case 1 is the chief wildlife warden is satisfied and that any wild animal has to become dangerous. It should be protected to the human life. It should be dangerous to the human life. It should be such animals should be hunted by given by the case 1, and the case 2 is a killing or wounding the good faith of any wild animal is a self-defense shall not be protected. Shall not be protected. These are the duties of the Wildlife Advisory Board. An authority is to be appointed constituted under the Act are appointment of director and other officers, appointment of chief wildlife warden and other officers, power of delegates, constitution of Wildlife Advisory Board, and the procedures to be followed by the board. And the duties of Wildlife Advisory Board is selection of areas declared as a sanctuaries. Selection of areas declared as a sanctuaries. The formulation of the policy for the production and conservation of wildlife and specified plants also comes under this. Okay, this wildlife protection of 1982 is given by the Parliament Government Act of Parliament of India for the protection of plants and animal species. Here, before this Wildlife Protection Act, there was only the national parks. So there was no any protection acts like 1972 Wildlife Protection Act 1972. There are only designated as a national parks. Okay, the objectives of this is prohibition on hunting of specified wild animals, birds, and plants, setting up and management of national parks, wildlife sanctuaries, and control of trade and commerce in the wildlife products. Control of trade and commerce in the wildlife products. These are some of the environmental legislations. The laws given by the environmental legislation is to protect the environment and the collection of laws and environmental regulations. Okay, one is protection of law, protects the environment and the collection of laws. It includes regulations, agreements, and a common law that govern the how women interact with the environment. And it includes the environmental regulations like law governing the management of natural resources such as forest, minerals, or fisheries, and related topics such as environmental impact assessment or comes under the environmental legislation. Prohibition on hunting of specified wild animals, birds, and plants, setting up and management of national parks and wildlife sanctuaries, control of trade and commerce in the wildlife products, and authorities to be appointed are appointment of director and other officers, appointment of wildlife warden and other officers, power of delegates, constitution of wildlife advisory board, procedures to be followed by the board, and the duties are it is duties given by for the wildlife advisory. The advise the state government about the selection of areas to be declared as the sanctuaries, national parks, and closed areas. Okay, how we have need to select? It has to be like one is sanctuaries. One should be sanctuaries, and one should be uh, national parks. National parks, and next one is the closed areas to be. We need to declare sanctuaries and the national parks, closed areas. Formulation of policy of protection and conservation of wildlife and the specified plants. Wildlife and the specified plants also comes under this. Here, sections given are section 9, section 10, and section 11 by the state government. Section 9 is a prohibition of hunting. Capturing, killing, poisoning, trapping any wild animals is prohibited. Section 10 is maintenance of records of wildlife killed and captured. Section 11 is the hunting of wild animals to be permitted in contained cases. Contained cases. The references for this environmental sustainability is Robertson, Margaret, Sustainability Principles and Practices, Routledge, Tyler and Francis's Group 2017. Responsibility for the teaching sustainability in the context general of sustainability education. Okay, these are the two references books like Robertson, Margaret, Sustainability Principles and Practices, is Taylor and Francis Group 2017, and the responsibility for teaching sustainability in context general sustainability of education are the references to be followed for the environmental sustainability. Environmental sustainability. Okay, thank you.
Like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.